everybody. Thank you again for being here with us. The webinar that we are hosting today is on AI, accessibility, and universal design for work. So we're really excited to be talking about, just what are the opportunities that AI brings, and specifically for disability, people with disabilities and those that are neurodivergent, and what should companies be considering in adopting AI, and to have a lens of accessibility and universal design. And today I'm joined by Matt Ledger, who's our Director of Strategy and Growth, and we'll be doing more of an introduction shortly, so you can understand him and his expertise that he brings to this topic. Next slide. Thank you. So for anybody who's new to NeuroTalent Works, we are a nonprofit organization that partners with companies to advance neurodiversity inclusion in the workplace, and to really understand what it means to embrace, appreciate every type of mind, and to ultimately connect employers to a neurodiverse talent pool and to support neurodiverse talent in the workplace as well. We're almost 10 years old. Next year is our 10-year anniversary. And we have worked alongside over 50 companies in fostering workplaces that are neuro-inclusive. And we also work one-on-one with many job candidates and other organizations that support neurodiverse talent in moving towards employment and closing the 80% unemployment gap. And so, yeah, thank you so much for being here with us today and to learn with us. Next slide. Just some housekeeping here. We want this to be an interactive session, and I have a lot of experts in the room here too. I see of other people that are joining us. So we really want this to be interactive and to be able to have a conversation or to answer your questions. So at the top, you'll see a Q&A function, and if you could drop your questions in there as Matt is presenting or as we're sharing, please feel free to do that and we'll have time to answer them at the end. This is a recorded webinar, so just want to make sure that everyone's aware of that and that there are accessibility features built into Teams, thank you Microsoft, where you can look at slides, you can self-pace, you can zoom in on them, you can turn on transcription and translation. There's a high contrast mode. And then, of course, when we get to the Q&A section also, we'll welcome you to come off mute if that's a more comfortable way to contribute. But otherwise, feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A. All right, so let's jump right in. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a co-founder and executive director of NeuroTalent Works, and I am really excited to introduce Matt Ledger and to also announce, I think publicly for the first time, that he has been appointed to the American Enterprise Institute's Commission on Artificial Intelligence and the American Workforce. And this is a very high profile commission. And I'm going to let him introduce and talk about it more so I don't butcher it. But I could not be more proud to have him on our team and in this work, because part of his role is going to be ensuring that people with disabilities and those that are neurodivergent are considered and included as we consider AI and the impact on the workforce, and future publications to come from him on this. So I feel so grateful to have him as my colleague and partner in leading this work. And so he's going to be, he is our resident AI expert and my AI coach, as I'm trying to adopt it and learn it for myself and the organization. So welcome, Matt, and let's dive right in. And please, if you could introduce yourself too.
Yes. Well, you did most of it for me, which was great. Thank you for that. And I blush. Thank you. So thank you everyone for being here on a Friday as summer is beginning. Really appreciate it. We know this topic is top of mind for everybody. So we've been working to come up with some guidance that some of our partners and the organizations we work with can use to ensure that AI is something that benefits the population, that the neurodiverse community, excuse me. And so this is something I presented a couple of weeks ago for the first time with a webinar for the Center for Disability and Inclusion. So if you were a part of that session, this is more or less a repeat of that same content, but we wanted to make sure this content was brought to the NeuroTalentWorks audience. So sorry if this is repetitive for some folks, but there will be an opportunity to engage with us at the end. So as Jessica said, I am Matt Ledger. I'm the Director of Strategy and Growth here at NeuroTalentWorks. I am also an industry technology analyst. I've been doing that work kind of in the tech for good space for over a decade now, kind of analyzing how technology can be used as a force for good, and that the public benefits from technology development. As Jessica said, the ink is drying as we speak on a contract that I just signed with. It's actually a little bit longer of a mouthful than Jessica had mentioned, but it's the AEI Urban Institute Commission on AI and the Future of the American Workforce. This is something that kicked off a couple of weeks ago. It is an effort co-chaired by former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, and former Secretary of Commerce and Governor of Rhode Island, Gina Raimondo. And co-led by Brent Durrell, who's a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, and Elizabeth Jacobs, who's a senior fellow at the Urban Institute. I am supporting that team of folks as we drive the work of the commission forward. It is a one-year-long effort that is designed to scenario plan around artificial intelligence and its impact on the labor market. The reason why we're doing scenario planning is we actually feel like it's impossible to accurately predict how much AI will impact the workforce positively or negatively. We see lots of stuff happening in the news around, 50% of jobs are going to get impacted by AI, or 10% of jobs can get totally eliminated by AI. You see it all over the place, but it's actually impossible because of so many things that are going into whether AI actually has that type of effect on jobs, to really accurately predict that. So what we're trying to do is create a set of plausible scenarios we might see, and then develop a set of policy triggers and recommendations to align with whatever direction we end up taking in the labor market as it relates to AI-driven job disruption. It's a 13-month effort kicking off this month. So in July of next year, we will have a final report released, but we'll be releasing reports throughout the year. And as Jessica said, my role in that is to ensure that the voices of people with disabilities and people who have neurodivergent conditions, to ensure that their concerns and their needs and support goals are part of that final report and part of the work that we do. So very, very excited. Much more to come on that. That's about as much as I can say on it right now. But today's session is about AI, accessibility, and universal design. The emphasis here is meant to be practical. I am not here to make the case that AI is some magic solution. We're not here to focus on far off future scenarios. We want to focus on what employers, HR leaders, inclusion practitioners, managers, and teams can realistically do today with AI as it relates to accessibility. The central argument of today's session is this, if I can boil it down to a sentence: AI can make work more accessible, flexible, and inclusive, but only if organizations implement it intentionally and responsibly. And I'll actually talk about practical ways that we can actually do that. So quickly, here's how we'll go through the session for today. We'll start first. We already did our brief introductions. I will start then by talking about the why now, other than the obvious of AI is everywhere. Like, why are we talking about this particular issue right now? We will talk about some of the ways in which AI can be helpful from an accessibility standpoint. We will also talk about where AI can do harm, because again, good intentions can lead to bad outcomes sometimes if we're not careful. After that, we will walk through a practical strategy for thinking about how AI and accessibility can work at scale across your organization. We'll close with some recommendations. And if we have time, depending on how many questions actually come in through the Q&A, Jessica and I will have a very short fireside chat, just kind of talking about her reactions to the presentation. We have a surprise kind of guest joining us for a quick 5 minutes, a new partner that we are formulating a strategic partnership with, who's going to present for a few minutes about per organization, what they do and how it fits into this conversation. And we, again, will open up for Q&A for the whole audience, whether it's in the chat, feel free to post it there, or excuse me, in the Q&A function, not the chat specifically, or you can come off mute at that point and ask your question. So the why now? This is important because there's kind of two major forces happening that are converging at the same time. And if I can oversimplify it a little bit, the first is that the workforce is changing, right? Employers are continuing to deal with hiring challenges, retention pressure, skill gaps, changing workforce expectations. There's also demographic shifts that are reshaping the labor market. We've all heard about, birth rates and population decline and all these sorts of things. Many employers are looking more seriously at talent pools that have historically been overlooked and undersupported in order to fill their talent needs, right? And that includes people with disabilities and people with neurodivergent conditions. The second major force that's happening is that the nature of work is actually changing. So work is increasingly digital. Regardless of the profession that you're in, you're probably using technology at some point in your work. AI is becoming embedded in everyday tools that we all use, whether we want it or not, frankly. We have email, meetings, documents, search, learning platforms, HR systems, enterprise tools, collaboration platforms, you name it. And employees are also bringing their own AI to work to experiment with ways that they can use it to write, summarize, plan, organize, learn. Everyone's kind of bringing AI in some way, shape, or form to work. And it's taking over our workplaces, frankly, leading to all sorts of challenges around managing tool sprawl, digital transformation, and reimagining how work gets done. But these challenges also create new opportunities to make work more flexible, accessible, and supportive, right? Helping people with all abilities reach their full potential. So the reason this conversation matters now is that these forces are butting heads with each other, and we need to entirely rethink recruitment, talent development, job training, and just about everything else related to workforce development and the jobs of today and tomorrow. So, like I said, we'll talk about a few ways AI can be helpful. I'm not going to go through all of these in the interest of time, but we will make these slides available to everyone when the event is over. This will also, again, be recorded and you can watch it back. These are all meant to be real life practical examples, not speculative, things that I'm actually seeing companies do today with the organizations that we work with. So I've categorized kind of common workplace frictions that impact people with cognitive and physical differences and how AI can support in each area, as well as the accessibility value that it brings. So just again, to highlight a few of them, first example, top of the list here is long meetings, right? So that's a big friction point for a lot of people. For many workers, meetings are, too long and inaccessible. And so things like live captions, transcripts, summaries, action items that are generated by AI can support employees who are deaf or hard of hearing, or they can support people with ADHD or auditory processing differences, memory challenges, fatigue, anxiety, people who struggle with information overload, which is probably everybody, right? This is a good example of universal design, right? A support that may be essential for one person can be useful for pretty much everybody else. Another one is kind of digital communication, right? So I like to say that email is probably the worst form of communication on the planet. And we also are probably using multiple communication tools at work every day between Teams or Slack or Google or something like that. Natural language processing can be used to support speech to text, text to speech, language translation, communication flexibility. This can help employees use alternative communication methods, especially for those who have speech or language differences or who are non-native speakers, for example, and workers who process information better in written rather than verbal form. AI can be an incredibly helpful tool there. One last quick one to highlight is visual content, more towards the bottom of the chart here. AI can be used to suggest alt text, provide image descriptions, help remediate documents, and support document tagging and things like that. This matters for blind and low vision users, but also helps create more structured and usable content for everyone, right? Or for people who have kind of image processing challenges. AI can be really helpful in helping people understand the images and interpret the images that they're seeing. But AI does not make work accessible by default. If there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's probably this, right? AI transcripts can be inaccurate. An AI summary can leave out the most important point that happened in a meeting. An AI generated alt text description can be completely false or misleading. AI hiring tools can disadvantage candidates with different communication styles, right? So we need to separate AI capability from accessible implementation. A one-off tool does not equal an accessibility strategy. So the better approach is to treat AI and accessibility as part of a broader organizational framework. Later in this presentation, a few slides from now, we will dive into exactly how you do that. So I talked about where AI can go right. We know AI doesn't mean accessibility by default. Here's a big reason why, right? Here are a few reasons why that is, right? So let's talk about where AI can go wrong here. This is not meant to be alarmist. It is meant to be realistic about the challenges AI presents, and also provide you with some guidance for how you can mitigate some of these harms. The first is over automation. So this is, this happens when AI becomes a replacement for human support, connection, or decision making. An example of this can be, an organization might use a chatbot to answer accommodation questions, but fail to then provide a clear path to a real person or to an accommodation process itself, right? Or it might rely on automated screening tools in hiring without understanding how these tools affect candidates with communication or mobility challenges. So the harm reduction principle here is pretty simple, right? Use AI to enhance human support, not replace it. Humans must remain accountable and, accountable for consequential decisions. The second risk is algorithmic bias and exclusion. So AI tools may work better for some communication styles, disabilities, accents, work histories, or behavioral patterns than others. Even when a tool is not intended to discriminate, it can still create unequal outcomes. You've probably heard a bunch of stories about this in the news and how this has happened in many organizations. An example of this is an AI interview tool interpreting kind of eye contact, facial expressions, tone, or response speed in ways that disadvantage, candidates who have autism or candidates with speech differences. Even the fear that this might happen can actually reduce trust and discourage candidates who are very qualified for your jobs from even participating in the hiring process at all, or the recruitment process at all. The mitigation here is to test these tools with diverse users before and after deployment. Ask the vendors you're buying these tools from about what potential biases might exist, and how they're being mitigated from the vendor side. And it's really, really important that we make sure that we test these tools rigorously and understand what they're capable of and not capable of. Another risk is privacy violations, right? Accessibility related tools may involve sensitive information, right? Some data might be explicitly disclosed, right? Such as a person explicitly requesting a disability related accommodation with a chatbot. Other data may be inferred from patterns of tool usage, communication, productivity, or quote unquote behavior. Organizations need to be really careful here, right? You need to collect the minimum amount of data necessary to help people, be transparent about what's collected and why, use consent where appropriate and legally required, restrict access to who can see that information in terms of that interaction with the chatbot, and avoid using accessibility related data for unrelated kind of employment decisions. The fourth risk here is surveillance creep. This is something not a lot of people talk much about, but is really important, right? So this is where a support tool that was provided as maybe an accommodation slowly becomes a monitoring tool. So a tool introduced to help an employee manage tasks could become a way to track how quickly people complete their work. A meeting assistant could become a behavioral record. A writing tool could become a productivity metric. rather than an accommodation, right? That shift can damage trust, especially among employees with disabilities who may already worry about being judged, penalized, or misunderstood for the differences that they live and work with every day. The fifth is what I call the digital accessibility divide, right? Some tools are accessible, others are not. Some employees get modern tools, others are stuck with inaccessible systems. Some departments have support for accommodations and things like that, others might not. This creates uneven experiences that can deepen the barriers that people with disabilities face at work. This is why organizations need to look across the full digital work environment, not just individual tools, to ensure that every tool people are using doesn't create barriers for work that are unnecessary. The sixth risk here is job displacement or fear of displacement. We all know this fear. AI can be positioned as a productivity enhancer, but workers may reasonably fear that it will be used to eliminate their job or devalue the human contribution that they bring. For workers with disabilities, this fear may be even sharper, right, as they're often already facing bias or job insecurity as it exists already without this technology. So employers need to be clear about the purpose of AI. Is it being used to support people, reduce unnecessary friction in workflows, and improve access? Is it being used primarily to cut labor or produce, and increase productivity? What is the use for it? Importantly, AI is changing how we work, regardless of the intent, right? So your talent will want to know what you're doing to help them train and upskill, or how you're going to support them in this transformative moment in technological history. The fear component is bigger than the technological aspect of change when it comes to AI, and you cannot shy away from that. The final risk is accommodation substitution, right? This is especially important. Employers should not use generic AI tools as a substitute for individualized accommodation processes. AI may be a part of an accommodation. It may support an employee. It may reduce the need for some individualized interventions because the environment is better designed, but it should not replace the interactive process, human judgment, or individualized support for people who need it. Sometimes what people need is something AI can't do for them, but you need to do the work to find out what that is. So to take advantage of AI as an accessibility enhancer and mitigate its risks or harms, organizations need a new strategy for AI accessibility. To help, we've actually developed a 5-pillar framework to support your organization's work in this area. And this is hot off the presses. Effectively this month, we finalized and produced this framework. So these are not necessarily in any particular order, and one doesn't necessarily dominate another. These are 5 pieces that are supposed to work together to help scale AI for accessibility at your organization. So the first piece is kind of assistive and productivity tools, right? So we've talked about these already. These are things like captioning, screen readers, transcription, writing tools, image descriptions, content remediation, work planning tasks. These are often the most visible examples of AI where it can help support accessibility. The key here is just matching the right tool to the right person in the right work context, or to address the right barrier that they're facing. A tool is only helpful if employees know it exists, can access it, are trained to use it, and are supported when it doesn't work. The second pillar is what I call kind of accessible enterprise platforms and technologies, right? So these are systems employees use every day: enterprise applications, learning management systems, collaboration tools, portals and intranets, IT ticketing systems, benefits platforms, productivity suites, right? If these systems are inaccessible by design, employees are forced to work around the barriers that technology creates. That is inefficient, it's inequitable, and it makes life harder for people that work for you. So we need to make sure that the kind of enterprise tools we are all using are accessible by design. And there's a lot that's actually happening in the technology world to make that happen. The third pillar is kind of governance and oversight, right? So this is where organizations define their policies, accessibility standards, procurement requirements, privacy and consent rules, escalation pathways, human review expectations, corporate ownership of AI and accessibility, right? Who owns the decisions and consequences of what we're doing here? This is the difference between kind of randomized tool adoption and responsible implementation is this governance pillar in the middle here. The fourth pillar is training and change management, right? AI changes how people work, how work gets done. Employees need technical skills, but they also need human skills, right? How do you communicate? How do you manage inclusively? How do you support different working styles? How do you redesign workplaces? Managers need particular support here because they're often the people translating policy and frameworks into kind of the day-to-day work experience for people. The fifth and final pillar is continuous improvement, right? This includes employee feedback, accessibility testing and user testing, issue resolution, usage analytics, outcomes tracking, satisfaction metrics, and communities of practice, right? No organization will get this perfect on the first try. And this technology is going to move so quickly that new things will happen that you'll have to adapt to. So this will always be iterative no matter what. It's a journey, not a destination. So the goal is to build kind of a learning system or learning culture where employees can safely report issues, leaders can see what's working and what's not, and organizations can improve over time. So in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over this, but these are kind of 5 critical questions, leadership questions you should ask to align with each of those 5 pillars to ensure that you're kind of answering the right questions and bringing AI in as a responsible tool for accessibility. So coming out of today's presentation, I wanted to provide you with a checklist of to-dos to bring back to your organization that will help set the stage for your AI accessibility strategy. First is kind of define your guiding principles, right? So for example, AI should expand access, not narrow opportunity. AI should support human judgment, not replace it in consequential decisions. Employees should know when AI is being used in the technology they're using, right? Accessibility should be built in from the start, right? These are ideas of guiding principles that should inform how you invest in this technology. Second is build accessibility requirements kind of into procurement. And so I'm kind of going out of order here, I'm realizing, but that's okay. Second is, so build accessibility into procurement. This is, if your organization's buying AI-enabled tools, accessibility cannot be an afterthought, right? You need to ask vendors about WCAG compliance. You need assistive technology capabilities, bias testing, data handling requirements, employee controls, remediation processes. You can actually put this in your, when you submit an RFI for vendors to respond to for certain technologies that you need, you can build this into the procurement requirements that will hold vendors accountable to ensuring that they meet these kind of accessibility standards you've set for your organization. Getting back in the proper order here, we also want to create cross-functional ownership and appoint AI accessibility champions, right? This cannot sit only with IT or only with HR, right? It needs HR, legal, and privacy, security, procurement, accessibility, inclusion, and people management. Employees, of course, employees with lived experiences also have to be part of this. So we need kind of cross-functional ownership, and we need AI accessibility champions who can kind of drive the work on the ground across different functions of your organization. Then we want to kind of define what our risk tolerances are and what our mitigation measures will be for those, right? The EU AI Act, for those who are familiar with it, has this great way of kind of categorizing AI risks by severity. So on the low end is kind of low risk AI uses. These are things like, using AI to draft your resume or something like that. But on the higher end of the risk is using AI to evaluate candidates for jobs. It doesn't mean you don't use AI for that. It just means it is a high risk thing to do because of privacy and bias and all sorts of things. So you need other measures to ensure that the harms of AI at that high risk level are mitigated. So you can use that as a framework kind of set your own risk tolerances for your organization around what's okay and what's not okay. They also have an unacceptable risk measure on the EU Accessibility Act that says we cannot use AI for this at all. One of those in the European Union is AI tools for desktop monitoring. So monitoring employee productivity using AI, not allowed, right? So you have to define what those unacceptable risks are, as well as the high, medium, and low. And then we also want to establish feedback and support mechanisms, right? That's that fifth piece of the pillar there, making sure that we're tracking outcomes, that we're putting metrics in place to measure how things are going, that we have ways for employees to raise concerns, request help, opt in and out of certain things, report barriers or challenges that they're facing, and influence improvements. So these are things you can take back to your organization and start working on immediately. So you have your checklist. Now let's establish the roadmap for the next 6 to 12 months. First phase, you're going to go on an assessing and a listening tour. So kind of figure out where you are with the technologies and policies and processes that you have in place today. Many organizations will find that some of their employees are ahead of their policy, or that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it needs to be understood in terms of how people are using AI today. You might find out some interesting ways that people who need this tool as an accommodation might be using it in a way that you can deploy across the organization. You also want to talk to your ERGs, your HR partners, your managers, your IT to figure out what they all need, what they're concerned about, what their constraints are that they're working with that can help you figure out your strategy. And then, of course, you need to look at the way that you conduct meetings, how you draft documents and share them. What do your workflows look like? How do you train to use certain things? You need to be looking at kind of where you are right now. The second phase is to kind of pilot and govern solutions to address some of the issues that you're facing today. So do not try to solve everything at once, but select 2 or 3 practical use cases. For example, meeting accessibility, document accessibility, onboarding support, workflow navigation. Just pick 1 or 2 of these areas to start with and start piloting solutions that are driven to make sure that accessibility is built in from the ground up. So for each pilot, define your rules of engagement, what's allowed, what's not allowed, what requires human review, what data cannot be used, who provides support when things go wrong, how will employees give feedback, test the tools with employees who have diverse accessibility needs, create manager-facing guides so supervisors understand how they can best support people using the new process and tools that you have in place. And then the third phase is to scale with support, right? So build a community of practice, appoint AI accessibility champions. We talked about this, right? Add accessibility requirements into procurement, launch employee training, create help desks or specialist support specifically for AI and accessibility use, track outcomes, right? And use that to make improvements. Review risks, then review risks and update policies based on the feedback people are giving. Right. The point is here that organizations don't need to wait for a perfect enterprise AI strategy before acting. But they do need structure. This provides that. So 6 really quick takeaways from this session. Start with barriers, not tools, right? Don't just look at AI and say, how can it help? Look at the barrier and ask whether or not AI or another solution can help address it. Sometimes I say this all the time. Sometimes you just need to improve the business process itself, reduce the number of clicks to get somewhere, bring all the information into one platform so that people aren't jumping around to different tools. Sometimes that's all you need to do. You don't need AI all the time. So start with the barrier, not the tool. Second, treat AI accessibility as universal design. So don't think about it just as a one-off accommodation process. Think about how this tool can be used to support everyone in the organization and how it makes for a more inclusive and productive workplace. Third, don't replace accommodations with AI, right? We talked about this. AI can support accessibility. It can be part of an accommodation strategy, individualized accommodations, the iterative process people have the right to. Human judgment here is essential. Fourth, governance and speed actually go hand in hand. Sometimes governance is treated as a barrier to progress and innovation. In reality, good governance helps organizations move faster because it creates trust, clarity, and consistency, right? This is about moving slow to move fast. So make sure governance is top of mind. Fifth, co-design with the people most affected. Nothing about us without us. We all know this rule. Sixth and final, be gentle and leave room for feedback and growth, right? AI is exciting for some people. It's also terrifying for others. There's a lot of misinformation and lots of fear-driven narratives around this right now. You need to let people air out their concerns, give them room to be a part of the process and say what they have to say, and also give them, power and autonomy to, participate or not participate in certain things. This is really, really critical to ensure that the people you are managing and those who are working for you come along for the journey that you're on too. So with that, I know that was a lot, but Jessica, let's come back on. We're gonna see where we're at with Q&A. Do we have any questions that came in during the conversation?
Yeah, thank you so much for this presentation. Just a wealth of so much knowledge and only so much that we could cover today. So thank you, Matt. That was just so insightful for many of us and practical. We don't have any questions right now, but I would like to welcome everybody who is in attendance. We would love to hear, what are your questions? What are you left just thinking about that you're like, what about this? I wonder about that. Please feel free to type that in the chat here, or submit the questions in the Q&A. And actually, when we get to Q&A, we'll open it up for if anyone wants to come off mute and ask a question or have a conversation as well. But I do have a few questions, Matt. And, I think in summary, as I was listening to everything you were saying and looking at who's here in the audience, what strikes me is a couple things. I think first, for our employers, some of our business partners that are on the call here, what I'm hearing is this caution of accessibility is not by design in the AI tools that we're developing. And you've really educated me on this, that looking at a business process is the most important thing to do, because we already are not considering many people, or we're not considering, there's bias already. And we're not all of a sudden just designing that into our AI tools. As we implement AI into organizations, we need to make that a part of the requirements of how we do so. And that I got caution from that, and consideration when you're doing governance. For our neurodivergent job candidates, for some of the coaches and community orgs here that support neurodivergent job candidates, what you were saying about first addressing the fears, I continue to hear that a lot. There are still fears of what AI is and what it does. But I think it's critical because there are so many benefits and aids that AI can bring. But they need to know what tools are available to them, demoing the tool to show people what's possible. I was working with a job candidate that was just like, I have to be honest, Jessica, like, AI is just scary to me. I don't believe in it. And I was like, I totally understand. And I said, could I just show you one prompt? We're talking about him applying to jobs. And so we went in together and I said, you're looking for these types of jobs. Help me. What should I be considering? And he needed to be walked through together to really kind of diminish those fears and to see, like, wow, look at how much it can help me. And so many possibilities, I think, for us with this. So a question I do have for you, as first, in thinking about this for organizations, you said that humans remain accountable to what AI produces. And it seems like the job tasks of professionals today in the workplace are shifting towards that. Companies are saying, please use AI, use the AI tools we're implementing. And what I'm hearing is like, oh, wow, my new job is to make sure AI is producing what is accurate and that my value as an employee of my company is that I am ensuring as a human that what AI produces, that I'm accountable to that. That's my job now. So what are some of the red flags that you would caution companies against when they're evaluating these AI tools? Like what questions should be asked?
Yeah, great question. The first thing is to actually critically look at the vendors and solutions that you are considering to determine whether that company is actually thinking about this issue or is prioritizing this issue at all. You can easily find it on their websites. Usually they'll say things about, how we're ensuring that we address bias in our platform, how we ensure that personal information, PII, right, personally identifiable information is protected. How we are thinking about design to ensure that everyone can use these tools and that no one's left behind. You can
Mm,
see that explicitly. Now, that can also just be marketing speak, or they're doing it because they have to, right? Otherwise, it would look bad. So pressure test them on it. When you get on
mm,
the call with their account managers or with the folks presenting at webinars and things like that, ask them, actually tell me how you protect my data
yes,
when I'm in school. Show me the money. Don't just say the thing.
yes,
So you just hold them accountable to their own words, right? And
yeah,
make them show you.
yes.
Um, and then in the procurement process, I mentioned this already, when you're buying technology, you have to, in your contract, if you care about this as your organization, hold that as a contract line or like an SLA that's like, you will hold to these standards around accessibility, right? Or
Hmm.
reserve the right to terminate this contract, get our money back, right? Put these types of things in the contract before it's ever implemented in your organization,
Yes.
because that's how you protect yourself, and that's how you also force the vendors to make sure that they care about these things. And if enough of our organizations who buy this technology did that,
Hmm.
would make it a business case for these companies to say, okay, we have to build the technology inclusively to make sure that no one is hurt by this, right? So
Yes.
as much as this technology is happening to us, right? This
Hmm.
kind of came on all of us with kind of very little warning or foresight. Um, we have to hold vendors accountable.
Yes.
It's kind of on us to hold vendors accountable to make sure that when we buy this technology, we're not contributing to the harm that it
Yes.
creates.
Yeah. That is, feels like such a critical moment for many leaders right now, that we are doing it intentionally. I was at an HR conference a couple months ago, and I decided to go to one of the booths and do one of they do interviews, AI interviews for phone screenings. And I started talking to them about what we do. And I said, my concern is that our candidates are going to get weeded out of your technology. And they were like, oh, okay, will you come do a demo? I said, yeah, I would love to. So I sat and did an interview with an AI agent. And for someone who speaks publicly all the time and is an extrovert, I was nervous. I was like, this is so hard for me to even articulate and give a response back. And that was my opportunity to share with them, like, here's what I'm concerned about. Our candidates who, may not make eye contact or who need that pause to consider what they're hearing before they provide a response. Just all these things that they had never thought about before. And they were like, we thought we were taking bias out, but we've missed this. Like, maybe we need to talk to you all. And I'm like, yes, please. And so I think that's on all of us who are advocates within our companies, within our organizations, to put ourselves in those shoes and to be asking, like you're saying, the vendors and telling them like this is what you may inadvertently be doing. And I just hear so loud and clear how important that is for us to do right now at this critical moment as adoption is happening. Um, yeah, anything you want to add to that?
Yes. So let me say something unequivocally, so people who are thinking about using AI tools for hiring remember this when they're considering it. you are not removing bias by removing humans from the hiring process.
Mm,
Especially if you're using AI, you are actually amplifying human biases at scale.
yeah.
So the biases that exist in your organization aren't stuck to one person who might have a particular bias towards a particular a person, whether it's explicit or implicit. You are putting a tool that has the same bias on in front of everyone who uses it, right?
Yeah.
And so you are actually scaling bias when you use AI exclusively for hiring decisions, right?
Hmm.
No one should be doing that, right? And there's court cases happening right now around platforms that have been used for AI recruitment and hiring decisions and things like that that might actually alter your ability to do this at all
Hmm.
in the distant future. But just know you are not removing bias by using AI and removing the human. It is the complete opposite.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we've got work before us, which is great. I do want to use this as a moment to pivot too, because what I do want to show everybody is a technology solution that is accessible and that is at an enterprise level that has been designed for neurodivergent professionals. And we're so excited to announce that we are formalizing a partnership with Everway as an AI tool for the workplace that has responsibly considered all of these things. And so I want to welcome Brittany Ross from Everway, who's going to share with us a little bit about their tool, so that for anyone in organizations here, you could consider, yeah, what Everway's partners, or sorry, what Everway's technology enables as an example. And then we do have some questions that we can answer. So welcome, Brittany.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. So my name is Brittany Ross. I am an AE here with Everway, and I work with a lot of our enterprise level organizations. So I'm going to take a quick 5 minutes here just to give a high level introduction to who Everway is. But you may have not heard of us because we actually just went through a rebranding exercise last year. We have been in business now for 30 years, and we have 800 plus global team globally. We have over 250 million people that leverage our products, and we're working with so many different organizations like EY, KPMG, and so on. So it's really, really exciting. So our mission is to help people understand and be understood. And our goal is to really do this by helping 1 billion people around the world by 2030. So super exciting mission that we're on. 1 in 5 people are neurodivergent. And unfortunately, in today's workplace, 76% of people with a disability or a neurodiverse condition do not fully disclose this at work. So a lot of people are really struggling in silence, which is really unfortunate. And we're seeing these stats in the workplace. So 61% of people have experienced stigma in the workplace. 56% have experienced communication barriers. 32% have experienced a lack of career progression. And 34% have experienced difficulty in recruitment in the interview process, just as Jessica was mentioning previously. So this is really why we wanted to bring Everway for work to the workplace and enhance it, of course. Workplace support for neurodivergent employees is extremely fragmented. We know there's multiple tools, there's this constant switching, this growing cognitive overload. And really where Everway for Work comes in is that we can deliver a consistent neuro-inclusive experience. It's one integrated suite. It reduces that friction and really allows that support at scale. So this is a high level look of what our platform is comprised of. So again, it's a software suite that helps people communicate, it helps them plan, and it really helps them focus and execute. And the impact across each one of these is real. So, from tools like speech to text, text to speech, to refining and summaries, to screen masking. This really helps reduce the cognitive load, any misunderstandings, and improves those communication skills. Over to planning. This is a really great feature for those that are visual planners, those that like to throw things up on a whiteboard. It supports those visual nonlinear thinkers, and it helps teams communicate and orchestrate complex projects as well. And the last but not least is all around focus and execution. So this is really great to help productivity, really ADHD friendly, with inclusion things like a Pomodoro timer to ambient noise to really help people get motivated, focused throughout their workday and help them really manage their projects from start to finish. So this is a high level look at the overarching platform. We've, of course, grown this over the past 30 years, and now really, again, kind of take this from the full workday for folks. We've also included some AI pieces in here as well. So we really kind of view AI from an Everways perspective as AI light, really impact heavy. So there's a couple key areas that we've actually come out with over the past year, which is around summaries. So this is a really great tool that allows for people to put a lens, a tailored lens for every mind. So let's say I like distilling information more in bullet points. Well, my colleague likes to see things maybe in short paragraphs with emojis. It gives that person that specific lens built for themselves. They can completely customize it and start kind of, again, summarizing information in the way that they'd like to see. And then Refine is another great tool, again, on our toolbar that allows people to have a communication coach. So whether it's, building messages, checking tone for feedback and guidance, creating workplace friendly rewrites potentially. It gives this opportunity for people to plug in their information, but also it points them in a way where there's no prompts required and provides a teaching moment so people can learn and again improve their communication across the workforce. So these are just two examples of probably about 5% of what the entire product suite can help support. But, again, we'd love to kind of chat more. I know we have about 5 minutes here, so love to chat more, whether you want to reach out to me directly, to Jessica, to Matt to get connected. We are also going to be at Disability In coming up here in July in Dallas, Texas. So we'd love to meet with you there as well. But that's it. Thanks so much for having me again.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, Matt and I and Melody from our team who coaches neurodivergent professionals, we did a demo of the tool and we just saw like how beneficial this would be for our neurodivergent population, also for ourselves as just workers. There's so many tools that just sit at the top of your desktop that just make work easier for all of us, and that is the universal design. So we're thrilled to be partnering with you all and big fans of the product. So thank you. And yeah, we do have a couple of questions that came in, so I will address those here. But yeah, thank you, Brittany, so much for being with us. And please contact us if anyone has questions or wants to see the tool. All right. So one of the questions we got here, Matt, is if you could share about the options or limitations around IP protection in AI. So the example here, if an organization licenses an AI platform, is there assurance that what the users enter, like within the walls of the organization, that it's if the organization's choosing to train the AI on their own IP, is there assurance that that training material doesn't flow to the AI owner? Yeah.
Yes, so the short answer is yes. The longer answer is you have to make sure that the vendor you're buying this technology from puts those types of protections in place for you. So like I said before about putting accessibility kind of mandates into your procurement practice, you also need IP protection as part of your contract, like hold your vendor, hold their feet to the fire on protecting the data that you put in. So as an example, the company I work for full time uses Claude Enterprise. So it's an enterprise platform that's basically, consider it like a copy of Anthropic's Claude. That is a local version that is protected. And we can put our data into it. It does not flow back to the kind of more public versions of Anthropic. Google has a similar capability. OpenAI has a similar capability. So like Google is I forget the full name of it, but it's Gemini for Enterprise or something like that. OpenAI Enterprise has ChatGPT Enterprise, right? So there's those solutions versus like if you just individually are using ChatGPT or another solution and entering your company's data into it, that is not a sanctioned use of ChatGPT, right? Or a company sponsored use of ChatGPT, there's no protection. There's no IP protection that comes from that.
I thought I heard recently that in ChatGPT, there's now a function that says, do not use my information for training. Do you know if does that actually safeguard what you're putting into the prompt as an individual, not in the enterprise?
Yeah, like one of those yes and no things. Like,
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly.
Yeah.
Without the kind of enterprise protections you get, just clicking that button,
Okay.
it might stop them from, for example, putting into the public model like, hey, Matt Ledger asked this chatbot this thing, and it might stop your name from being affiliated with the thing you mentioned, but like it might still be the data you've generated.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So I'm not saying
Okay.
that specifically about OpenAI. I'm not 100% sure, so I'm not saying that about them specifically. But you just have to be careful with these tools on the consumer side of things because there's very little guarantees about those things.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is if you want the assurance that it's not being used, then that's the governance piece of like that is in the contract, in the line, or you have an enterprise solution you've bought that does ensure that protection is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay. I know we are right at time, so I just want to thank everybody for being here. And I could stay on for maybe like 5, 10 more minutes to answer a couple of these other questions. But for, yeah, everybody that's here, just thank you for being with us and feel free to stick around if you want, or otherwise have a wonderful weekend, and we hope to see you again soon. And Matt will also be at Disability Inn, so if anyone's there, connect with him, connect with Brittany from Everway. So thank you all. All right, and I just the other couple questions here that I can address for anybody who's staying on. First, I saw the question quickly about Everway. Is that something individual employees would purchase, or is it something companies make available? Right now, Everway's product is only at an enterprise level. It's for companies to adopt. They don't yet have individual licenses. Although we have also been encouraging that and trying to see what's possible. So we'll keep you posted. But for now, it's an enterprise solution. Then I see another question. Are there opportunities for more neurodivergent employees to help companies implement accessibility and universal design? I'm sure there are AI solution consultants, but I don't hear much if they're hiring us and neurodivergent individuals. Matt, could you give some light there?
Yeah, I'm not 100% aware offhand of like specific opportunities to help here. I do know that there are plenty of tech companies building AI tools that have like neurodiversity fellowships and like things like that. I've definitely seen that happen. Um, and I'm sure within, like, I know, for example, like Microsoft, we know for a fact, right, because we've worked with them, like they are very much focused on ensuring accessibility from all different differences, right, physical and cognitive and so forth. that's built into the design of Microsoft solutions, and Google does the same thing, right? So there's plenty of those types of things happening behind the scenes that might not get the fanfare or attention that they deserve. So there are opportunities out there. I think the challenge right now is, given the state of where we're at as a country, with some of the politics around diversity hiring and things like that, it does kind of make some of these things hide behind, like these things aren't being publicized in the way that they used to be. So it's kind of hard to find them explicitly.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we know it's a really difficult time in the job market for many. So, but we hope to, and we encourage the employers we work with to include neurodivergent people always in everything. But yeah, especially with AI, how important it is. All right, thank you. Well, I think those were all of the questions that I saw. Let me double check. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. If anyone has one more question that they want to ask, otherwise we will wrap up. Okay.
Looks like we're
All
good.
right. Yeah, thank you everyone for being here today and have a wonderful weekend.